Here is a small fact. You're going to die. Okay, let's just pause on that for a second. It's a jarring, powerful, and honestly incredibly blunt way to open a story. But it instantly grabs your attention, doesn't it? This cold, eerie truth isn't actually meant to terrify us. Instead, it establishes the ultimate reality of our narrator. We aren't being guided through this world by your standard everyday observer. We're being guided by the one entity who is waiting for absolutely all of us at the very end.
Now, what is truly fascinating here is the personality of this narrator. This is Death speaking. But this isn't some malicious, violent figure with a scythe. As he puts it, he is simply a result. And ironically enough, Death is exhausted. He's been doing this job for a very, very long time. And to cope with the sheer tragedy of his work, he actually relies on a deliberate distraction. He focuses on the colors of the sky. We're talking chocolate-colored skies, waxy yellows, cloud-spat blues. He uses these colors almost like a vacation to avoid looking at what really breaks his heart, which is the leftover humans, the survivors who are left crumbling in despair.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into the fascinating, tragic, yet undeniably beautiful world of a perpetual survivor. We're exploring the source material of a brilliant narrative centered around a young girl named Liesel Meminger. It is a small story, really. It's about a girl, an accordionist, some fanatical Germans, a Jewish fistfighter, and, well, quite a lot of thievery.
So, here's our agenda for today. We're going to hit 3 core pillars of Liesel's early journey. First up, the first stolen book. Then, life on Himmel Street, and finally, the midnight class. Let's get right into it.
Before we jump into the timeline, we really have to understand how Death perceives Liesel's story. He encounters this book thief 3 distinct times, and each time is literally seared into his memory by a specific color. First, there's a blinding global white in the snow of 1939. Second, a signature scribble of black smoke from a crashed plane in 1942. And third, a thick, devastating, soupy red from a bombed-out sky in 1943. And this brilliantly illustrates a haunting visual motif. When those 3 colors fall on top of each other, red, white, and black, they form the stark high-contrast image of the Nazi flag, which is the very symbol looming over this entire era.
All right, let's move to Section 1, the first stolen book, which takes place during a spectacularly tragic moment.
Picture this. It's January 1939. Liesel, who was almost 10 years old, is on this crowded, freezing train headed to Munich with her mother and younger brother, Werner. Suddenly, tragically, Werner starts coughing intensely, and then nothing. He passes away right there on the train. The train is forced to stop because of the snow, and her brother is hastily buried in this unnamed town by 2 shivering gravediggers. But here is where Liesel's life changes forever. As the gravediggers finish, a teenage apprentice innocently drops a black rectangle in the snow. Liesel picks it up. It has silver writing on it. It's the gravedigger's handbook. Now, she can't read a single word of it, but this innocent little moment marks the beginning of her illustrious career in thievery. And more importantly, this book becomes her only physical link to the brother and mother she is about to lose forever.
Which brings us to Section 2, Life on Himmel Street, and meeting a new foster family.
So Liesel is handed over to the foster care system in a town called Mulching, arriving on a street named Himmel. Now, the profound irony here is that Himmel actually translates to heaven, but the reality, murky snow, nervous-looking apartment blocks, gray air, and a whole lot of poverty. Our narrator notes that whoever named it must have had a really healthy sense of irony. It wasn't exactly a living hell, but it sure as hell wasn't heaven either. And waiting for her inside number 33 are the Hubermans. To really understand Liesel's new ecosystem, we have to look at the 2 radically different forces in her new home. On one side, we have her new mama, Rosa Hubermann. She's 5'1", wields an absolute iron fist, her cooking is atrocious, and she possesses the unique ability to aggravate almost anyone. She is constantly arguing and complaining, doing washing and ironing for rich households just to make ends meet. But then, on the other side, is Hans Hubermann, her new papa. He's a painter who barely gets work, rolls his own cigarettes, and plays the piano accordion. Where Rosa is a storm, Hans is a quiet sanctuary. He has these melting, soft silver eyes and an incredible brute gentleness about him. To most people, Hans is completely invisible, but to Liesel, his value is obvious right from day one.
You know, you really can't talk about Himmel Street without talking about its vocabulary. Rosa Hubermann's dialogue is utterly dominated by profanity. Every second word out of her mouth is Salmensch for a female or Saukerl for a male. That literally translates to filthy pig. It sounds incredibly harsh, but as we learn, this aggressive profanity bizarrely acts as the everyday language of affection and routine in her household. She genuinely loves Liesel, she just kind of shows it by bashing her with a wooden spoon and calling her a salvaging.
Now, we also have to understand how all of this builds into the broader historical reality of 1939 Germany. We can't ignore the political backdrop here. Liesel is mandatorily enrolled in the Bond of German Girls, the BDM, where she's learning to march straight and roll bandages. The local corner shop is run by Frau Diller, a staunch Aryan, who flat out refuses to serve anyone unless they enter with a crisp Heil Hitler. You've got brown-shirted Nazis marching down the street singing Germany over everything, and the streets feature abandoned Jewish shops with yellow stars painted on their doors. This is the inescapable, tightening grip of the Third Reich that surrounds their daily lives.
But even amidst this grim reality, there is still childhood. Enter Rudy Steiner, the boy next door. He has gangly blue eyes, lemon-colored hair, and is just permanently hungry. He introduces himself to Liesel by throwing a mud-filled snowball right into her face. But Rudy is legendary on Himmel Street for something called the Jesse Owens incident. Back in 1936, he was so obsessed with the black American athlete's 4 gold medals that Rudy covered himself entirely in charcoal and sprinted around the local track pretending to be Owens, much to the absolute horror of his politically anxious father. Insane or not, Rudy is audacious, fiercely loyal, and destined to be Liesel's best friend.
Moving on to the core of our explainer, Section 3, the Midnight Class and the Power of Words.
So, Liesel is dealing with these horrific, bedwetting nightmares every single night, constantly dreaming of her dead brother. And Hans Hubermann comes in every night mid-scream just to hold her. During one of these instances, he's stripping the wet bed and discovers the hidden, unreadable black book, the Grave Digger's Handbook. When Liesel finally admits she can't read, Hans, who honestly isn't a great reader himself, decides he's going to teach her. They begin this midnight class at 2 a.m. He uses his painter's pencil and an upturned piece of sandpaper to teach her the alphabet. And when the sandpaper runs out, they move down to the unlit basement. Using a kerosene lamp and actual paint, they start painting words directly onto the cement walls.
And this brilliantly illustrates the heart of their relationship. Remember, Hans is a house painter, right? Not exactly a fine artist, so his sketches are pretty primitive. When they're trying to think of a word for the letter S, Liesel playfully shouts salvaging, Rosa's favorite insult. Hans just roars with laughter and draws this faceless stick figure to represent the word. Liesel points out that it has no eyes, and Hans sweetly replies, with a smile like that, you don't need eyes. It is such a beautiful, intimate bonding mechanism built entirely around learning words.
But look, words are hard. And school? School is humiliating. Liesel is cast down with the younger kids because she can't read. During a terrifying reading test, she gets called up to the front of this sun-drenched classroom. She completely freezes. The words on the assigned page just blur into another tongue. But she desperately wants to succeed. So, from memory, she begins to loudly recite the only text she knows, Chapter 3 of the Grave Digger's Handbook, which is a morbid manual on how to dig a grave in the snow. The teacher snatches the book and physically punishes her in the corridor, while the entire classroom laughs.
And the humiliation doesn't even end there. During the break, a boy named Ludwig Schmeichel relentlessly taunts her about her stupidity. Liesel is pushed to her absolute breaking point. She just snaps, takes the book from him, and physically beats him up right there in the dirt. It's a brutal release of her trauma, her grief, and her profound frustration with her own powerlessness. In that moment, through sheer defiance, she claims her agency and earns the fierce title of the heavyweight champion of the schoolyard.
So, what does this all mean? We've seen Liesel steal a book from a grave. We've seen her weaponize the word salvaging into an inside joke. We've seen her battered by a school system that demands conformity, only to find solace pointing letters in a dark basement. What should you take away from this? Consider this for a second. In a 1939 Germany where words are being used by the Führer to incite war and literally tear the world apart, a young girl and her foster father are quietly using those exact same letters to build a universe of safety and love. In a world falling apart, how do words become both a dangerous weapon and our ultimate salvation? I'll leave you to think on that. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.